Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Women in Industry call for International Women's Day. This year's theme is Inspire Inclusion. Lisa, if you want to advance the slides. First off, this is a TAPI call, and with TAPI, we have some antitrust compliance. So this meeting will be held in accordance with TAPI's antitrust policy and procedures. TAPI's aim is to promote research and education and to arrange for the collection, dissemination, and interchange of technical concepts and information in fields of interest to its members. TAPI is not intended to and may not play any role in the competitive decisions of its members or their employers, or in any way restrict competition among companies. Also, this meeting is being recorded, so please just keep that in mind. Our agenda for today, I'm just going to really quickly run through the Women in Industry division of TAPI and then turn it over to Gabby. She's going to run the panel this morning, and then we'll open it up for discussion, Q&A, and then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and a call to action. So TAPI's Women in Industry division is really about inspiring, supporting, and developing women. We want to encourage more women leaders in the industry. It's really a great place to, interact and network with other women. And we're really trying to give women the tools to further themselves and their careers. And if you want to advance the slide. So we really, we have a vision. We see women being a long-term part of the paper industry. We want, again, to give people the tools and resources and really just be a place for women to grow and inspire each other. And that's kind of why we like to host a panel every year on International Women's Day. And if you want to get involved with WIN, there's a QR code on the screen. And all of the signups go directly to Lisa. She's the TAPI coordinator for the Women in Industry division. But if you'd like to get more involved, this is a good way to start by scanning that QR code, and we'd love to have you with us at WIN. So I will turn it over now to Gabby.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. And again, thank you for hosting this panel discussion. I think we are all, I'm hoping, really excited about today. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm Gabby Pinkney. I will be moderating your panel. I do work for Solenis, started off on the commercial team about 12 years ago. Time flies. And in the last 2 years of my 12-year tenure with Solenis, I have been in HR, really focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion for the globe. So when I heard, with this topic, inspiring inclusion, of course, I was more than happy to moderate and allow other people to share what they're doing. So again, the theme for International Women's Day 2024 is inspiring inclusion. Inspire inclusion. And I think it's really important to note that inspiring inclusion really sounds cool, but it's not just something that sounds cool. It really requires action. Everyone has a role to play when we talk about creating an equitable and inclusive society, workplace. And we also have to remember that inclusion is exactly what it says it is. It's including all. We cannot achieve inclusion by excluding anyone from the conversation or even replacing anyone, at the table. It's offering everyone a space to share, to grow, to prosper. And in order to celebrate this topic, I have a great group of panelists with me today who are going to share how they inspire inclusion within their respective spheres of influence. I urge you today to listen, to engage, to ask questions during this panel. Feel free to use the chat function, as Lisa said, for asking questions or sharing your stories if you feel comfortable even. We have dedicated time at the end for questions, but really we welcome your interaction throughout this panel. We are all here to learn, we're all here to grow, and to paraphrase the great Maya Angelou, do the best you can do until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about actions we can take to inspire inclusion and so that we can all do better. And first, in order to do that, we need to kick this off with meeting our panelists. So please, Tony, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and introducing yourself.
I don't think I'm on mute, and I'm glad that you got the pink memo. Thanks, Gabby, and welcome everyone, and thanks for your participation today as we celebrate the 48th Annual International Women's Day. Unbelievable. My name is Toni Myers. I work for Billerud. I am the elder statesman of this organization right now. I have over 30 years of paper industry experience. And I've been very, very privileged to have worked in many disciplines within the paper industry, including finance, sales, operations, and now government affairs. When I'm not working, I like to play golf. I listen to a lot of music. I read a fair amount, and I love to travel. I am married, and I have no children. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Tony. Caitlin, would you mind introducing yourself next?
Yes, I did not get the pink memo. But I'm Caitlin Pino. I currently am the product aftermarket manager for disc filters at Valmet. If we go back for years in industry, if we start counting from my first co-op way back in the day, that's 16 years ago now. And I am right now, all of my extracurriculars are my kids, because I have a daughter, Josie, who's 2, and a son, Frankie, who's only 4 months old. So they take up most of my time.
Keeping you busy for sure. Yes. And time does fly, doesn't it? So thank you for that, Caitlin. Eugenia, please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, my name is Eugenia or Eugenia Rivero Loyola. I am originally from Mexico City. I moved here when I was 13. I've been with WestRock for about 6 years. I think this summer it'd be my 6th year. I had the pleasure to be in the mill and the box plant. I even worked in HR and in my rotation part of a development program. And then now I'm in finance. So I did a huge leap from strategy to finance, but I'm really excited to kind of learn more of P&L and kind of impact our bottom line. And I see a couple of my coworkers join in, so thank you for the support.
Love that. And I love the support of your coworkers too. That's great that everybody is getting involved in this conversation. So now that we've made introduction, let's really get into today's discussion. Although we have a lot of women coming into industry, we still see gender inequities in the workplace. Panelists, if you don't mind, please raise your hand if you have ever experienced a gender inequity in the workplace. Feel free, if you're off camera as well, to raise your hand, right? If you experience, again, any type of gender inequity in the workplace. And as you can see, it's almost everybody on our panel, right? This is something that we need to talk about. This is something that we need to do actions in order to improve. So I would like, Tony, would you mind sharing some of the gender inequities that you've experienced within the workplace and really kicking off this conversation?
Absolutely, Gabby. And it's a great subject. And again, as you can see, it's not even reasonable or plausible for someone to say, I've never experienced inequities in the workplace. You can't root out all the bad guys, right? But what you got to do is you got to minimize the impact of the bad guys. And what I would tell you is I challenge folks to say, how will you execute your people strategy when you continue to have a workplace culture that doesn't embrace everyone, where the bad guys get to exist? And so it's up to leaders to really understand where they are and to root them out. And as you really think about it a little bit further and say, okay, we're in a fight for talent. All of us really want to get the best and the brightest. But if our workplace doesn't allow everyone to bring their best selves, do we really think we're going to be successful there? So I think that's more the challenge of Will you root out all the inequities in your workplace? Let's be reasonable. Probably not. But they can't be the norm. It's got to be, the lesser of the story, and just continue to again, just continue to root out the bad guys. And again, when you look across the swath of people that we're trying to hire, they have choices. And they're not going to work in organizations where they don't feel like they're bringing the best ideas available, that their thoughts aren't being taken seriously. And lastly, I would leave you with, this is a very competitive industry. And it's got to be all hands on deck, full court press. You can't afford to leave anybody behind because the industry is just so competitive on all fronts, whether it's for customers or margins or, EBITDA. You've got to have the best and the brightest, and they got to be fully engaged every day.
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. I think it's really important that we're intentional, right, about the workplace that we're creating for people, even before we bring them in, right? We say we want to bring in all these people with different perspectives. We have to make sure that the environment we're cultivating is one in which they feel like they can share. And Eugenia, I mean, I think you have a positive story even from this perspective on a positive story from an advocate, right? And someone who really helped you. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely, like Tony very well said, we all have experienced some sort of uncomfortable situations. And I think one very specific example that I have, I remember earlier in my career, I was at the mill and someone said, Eugenia, you would get away with murder just because you're Hispanic and also a woman. So you're representing two diverse backgrounds. So it almost in a way to imply that I was not capable and I was not there because of my schooling or my background or my efforts, but rather of who I was as a person. But I remember that I am a very outspoken person. I'm not for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO. If I'm gonna question something, I'm gonna do it. But in that moment, I felt so vulnerable that I wasn't able to speak for myself. But then someone was next to me and that person was like, can you please tell me what you meant by that? Right? It was such a simple question. Or I think they said that and then the other person looked stumped and they said, actually, you could just repeat what you said so I can understand it better. Right? So like those two questions really stumped that person, gave me a piece of confidence. And after the conversation kind of concluded, I think it could have been kind of an awkward instance because this person was a lot more senior than I was, both sides. So I think if I had that experience, I think I would have left that day feeling pretty uncomfortable. But I think that kind of erased it, and it just made a beautiful day out of it. I was just extremely grateful. And then another instance where I have positive ideas. You don't have to be someone in power to speak up. It could also be your peer saying, hey, Eugenia works at the Evadale mill. So say hi to her whenever you're over there, right? So an executive, they came to visit me because they said, oh, one of your friends told me that it'd be great for me to meet you, right? So it can be an inclusive in terms of, hey, my friend's over there and she loves some support. Like I didn't get to hang around many women at the time. So that just went a long way. My sister yesterday was saying a new employee showed up to their office and they were a little bit confused where she was going. But then my sister took ownership and said, I'm going to take her to lunch, right? So it can be simple acts of kindness that just say, hey, you're included, I see you. So I'm just very appreciative of the experiences I had.
I love those two experiences you shared and the fact that, you didn't necessarily have to speak up for yourself. Not that you don't have to, right? But in that situation, it was really impactful that leader to speak up. And yeah, Megan, you're saying the exact same thing in the chat right now, right? Like, it is great to have those allies. It's great to have those people that can sometimes speak up for you, so you don't have to constantly be straining your voice to do so, right? So I think it's important for all of us, especially leaders of organizations, to prioritize actions, initiatives, policies, whatever's needed to ensure inclusivity within our workplaces. I want to just briefly take a look at a cake model for diversity, equity, and inclusion, adding in belonging there too, before we really jump into some of the other questions on what we can do, what actions we can take when it comes to talking about inclusion. But folding it all together and baking a cake, you need first to gather all the ingredients you need, right? So that's your diversity piece. You need to measure the right amounts of each ingredient, which is equity. And you need to mix all the ingredients together for inclusion to create and enjoy and really celebrate the outcome, which is belonging. In the case when we're talking about the cake, when you're talking about diversity, you need a plethora of different ingredients to bake a cake, right? If the recipe says you need flour, sugar, baking soda, baking powder, eggs, that's what you need to gather, right? So in this metaphor, gathering all the ingredients together, like I said, is about diversity. It's a variety. It takes in the variety of difference, and it takes in a variety of differences, different perspectives, all the differences that exist among people. And if you go back to your list of ingredients, right, if all you did was add flour or sugar to your bowl, you would have a much different outcome than if you took all of the different ingredients and put them in the same bowl. So we have to remember that without welcoming that variety of different ingredients or individuals, that we failed to gain diverse perspectives, from people with different backgrounds, experiences, ethnicities, genders, and so on. And it really limits your company's ability to expand, learn, and grow. When we're talking about the ingredients and how much to put in the cake, in order to be successful, you have to realize that it doesn't take the same amount to make the cake, right? If we use the same amount of milk as we did eggs, as we did flour, I personally don't want to eat that cake, right? So it's really important that you realize this is the same for your team. You have to take into account that each person on your team needs different things in order to be successful. And that's the equity piece. Equity doesn't mean fair. It means that we are equitable, that we have to be just and realize that people come from different backgrounds and might need different access and opportunities to really flourish and progress. And that really takes communication, relation building, adaptability, and good listening skills. Now, where we'll spend the rest of today is on that inclusion and belonging piece. For our cake metaphor, right? Just like the ingredients of a cake need to be mixed in order for the ingredients to meld well together and do their job effectively and create inclusion, right? We have to do that in our workplace as well. Inclusion is putting people with different voices, opinions, experiences, education, backgrounds together in one room and giving them a seat at the table. It's taking so it's taking that diversity piece, which is all those different perspectives, and making sure that we are molding them and mixing them well together so that you have the right ingredients, the right amounts of all the ingredients, and that everything is mixed well. And that's when you get this amazing cake. So again, if you haven't, you can Google the cake metaphor, but I thought it was really great to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion in that way. And especially the belonging piece that, if you really educate on the D, E, and I, you get an amazing workplace where people can belong, excel, and thrive. And I think sometimes companies focus on that diversity piece, but it's that inclusion piece that is really going to get us to the next level. And that's what we want to talk about today. And we want to give you some actions that you can do to actually take your company to the next level, to focus on what you can do to inspire inclusion and even have a commitment at the end of this. So Tony, would you mind sharing a specific inclusion initiative that your organization has implemented and the impact that you've seen on the company culture because of it?
Absolutely. So I spearhead the Women in Business initiative at Billerud. And we're taking parts of our organizations that don't function as well to improve it for everybody. So that's when you talk about inclusion. It's not about excluding, it's about making the environment or atmosphere better for everybody. So we recognized pretty early on that our onboarding process was not adequate for any employee. I don't care what your sex or race was, it was just bad. So we took that about to say, hey, we got to fix the onboarding process. We took on the women's affinity, very much like this community that we have today. And so we started that at all our mill locations and converting to say, you guys get together once a month, once a quarter, you pick the timing and talk about issues that matter to you. So that group has started. We also are sponsoring the Bring a Girl to Engineering Day, introduce a girl to engineering, and that happens in a couple of weeks. We've got a company-wide celebration of this day today. So the entire company's celebrating International Women's Day. So it's just created a very positive and very energy-focused, effort around what it takes. And and what I would go back, Abby, it's kind of like all of you guys have worked in the paper industry. And if you've done it as long as I have, you may have the break reduction team or the working capital improvement team. And it's like, why do you have to do that every 2 or 3 years? What is it about our systems that don't make it permanent? And how do you make these kinds of efforts so they're part of the fabric of what makes your company who it is? So do you have the right metrics in place? Are you monitoring when things get off track? Do you have the right, foundation so it's not an initiative? It's just the way you do business. And you sign off and say, I do it because it makes us more successful and it makes us a better company. So that's the day I'm looking for, where you don't let it get off track.
I completely agree with that. Yes, it needs to, I like what you said there about it not just being an initiative. It's part of your culture then at that point, right? It's not something, hey, that you even have to try on, right? It's like you're just muscle memory, right? You do it, and you do it because it feels good. You do it because you see the value in it. So I love that. Caitlin, what about you?
Well, I really like what Tony said, that it really action before leads to inclusion, the way that she's doing it, and I love that. My organization has started a women's led group where we talk about different things that are interested to us within the business, from embracing change to the art of negotiation. We've kind of covered a whole bunch of different business type topics. And it's a really good networking group too within our company, because it's all of North America, which has been great. But most recently, we've done an International Women's Celebration at many of our different offices. And I thought that was a wonderful experience. At my office, we had very good participation, and we all filled out little cards about how we're moving forward with inclusion. And I was floored by some of the responses we got from a lot of the men in the building as well. So that was awesome.
Yes, and I think a great point there, Caitlin, is that it's so important that we offer and extend everything we do for International Women's Day to our men colleagues as well, right? It's important that they feel like they can be part of the celebration, because we want them to be our allies. We want them to celebrate with us. We want them to be included in the actions that are needed in order for us to get seats at the table or be included in the conversation, or, Eugenia, speak up, right, when they see an inequity being performed. So I love that for you. We also here at Solenis have those employee business resource groups for women. And one of our topics that I just wanted to share is we have people submitting stories on how they've been impacted by mentorship actions to inspire more people to be mentors, and just the importance of mentorship. So I thought that was cool and wanted to share it with everyone, just because I think sometimes when we're talking about actions, we don't talk about mentorship or sponsorship enough. And I thought that that was a great initiative that was going on for the month. And we'll be sharing those throughout social media too. So I'm really excited to see everything that all of these different companies have coming out. You'll see more from TAPI as well, and women in industry specifically. And so just be on the lookout, y'all, and really engage yourself in all of these things. Now, yeah, please, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I think about corporations, they're ecosystems, right? And with all ecosystems, they just don't thrive unless the entire system is working together. So there's no way you can exclude or otherwise keep others from participating because the ecosystem doesn't work. And I think if we think of it in that manner, you realize that it's not one or the other, it's all.
Yes, it is. It is all. But that also, I mean, and like you said, including everybody is key, right, to sustaining the ecosystem. But there are also challenges, right, in creating that inclusive workplace. And it takes some different and sometimes strategic things to try to overcome them. Eugenia, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced in creating that inclusive workplace?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, that is not my daily job, but I always have conversations with other people, and there's some hesitation sometimes on, hey, we're inclusive, we're taking something away, or we're prioritizing minorities or anything like that. But what I think the message is, hey, I think you said it, where you're putting a box so someone can see over the fence where someone else was tall enough to already see over the fence. So I think to an extent, this is a two-piece sword, right? We want to make sure that we are recognizing and being empathetic towards the experiences that are happening and that are true inequities, but also have some self-reflection and leveraging that mentorship and those resource groups. Westrock also has resource groups that we are able to take part of. And like if you're inspired by someone, reach out to them. Hey, would you be willing to be my mentor, right? People are busy, so don't take it too hard too if they're not able to mentor 100 people. But taking those hard conversations and separating what is me experiencing inequity and what is me experiencing I'm doing something in the workplace that's making me less effective, right? So one perfect example, I love speaking and developing relationships with people. And if you have a 1 hour meeting, sometimes if I start asking things about your life, or we just get to talking, we could stand in that meeting for 2 hours, right? So I know that I have to use my words wisely, right? And I'm looking at the time right now just to make sure that I don't overspeak and I don't take the whole meeting. But those are things that I know by self-awareness, or also by surrounding myself with people that are willing to tell me what I don't want to hear so that I can correct and continue to improve myself, right? So my call to action for you is don't be shy. If you're inspired by someone, especially a peer, right? There's a young person in innovation that I was really impressed with how concise her words are. And whenever she spoke, the words that she had power, right? So I asked her to be my peer mentor. And then, but I also have asked other people above me to kind of teach me. So just surround yourself with mentorship and be willing to receive that negative feedback and apply it to and whatever people are doing better than you, don't say it's just because he's a man or it's because they are whatever. Ask, what are they doing better than I could be learning from?
Yes, all of that, Eugenia, is what we need to do. And just quick, Caitlin, I'll let you go. The reference that Eugenia was talking about in the beginning about the boxes was, it's a picture. I'll try to put it in the chat. It's about the difference between equality, equity, and reality. And like you said, it's showing that, equality would be, so I'm 5'3". Sarah, who opened up the call, I think Sarah, you're 5'6". If we were both looking over a fence, I would need a different size box underneath me to look over the fence. And so this analogy shows that if if we were giving an equal box, Sarah can still see over the fence and I can't see over the fence. So if we get different size boxes, though, it allows both of us to see out over the fence. And what you see in reality is that sometimes people have 5 boxes when other people have 1 box, right? So that's the box analogy there, is that everyone needs to be given kind of different things. But bringing it back to what you were saying, Eugenia, I think it's really important. All those things that you mentioned, from mentorship to even self-awareness, is really impactful in thinking about creating that space for yourself in the workplace. Caitlin, I know you had a comment too.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on what Eugenia was saying. I think that one of the biggest problems that we've seen, that when I was actually leading up to this panel discussion, I was talking to a lot of the women in in the company, and I was getting great stories back and feedback from them. But some of them were less, they were hesitant on this kind of topic. And I think one of the big points that I think that's one of the hard hurdles we have to get over is that putting a bigger box under someone else doesn't take anything away from the person that's giving that that help. So I think that's one of our big hurdles, is explaining that inclusion isn't hurting anyone, it's only helping us.
Yes. Nothing more. I couldn't have said it better. Yes. And I think that's definitely something that we need to think about as people, as teammates, but also we need to encourage our corporations, right? These larger ecosystems, like you said, Tony, to consider that as well.
Well, I have a couple of things. It's like when you have a high tide, all boats rise. And if you improve the environment for one group, you're improving the environment for your entire organization. It's not exclusive.
Yes. Yeah. And we don't want it to be, right? So, and that's the whole purpose of this conversation that we're having, right, about inclusion. So, I mean, we're talking about, we talked about kind of what each of your organizations have done, some of the biggest challenges with that. But what are some practical steps, Caitlin, that individuals can take to promote gender equality and inclusion in their day-to-day professional interactions? I think sometimes people think, this needs to be the leaders, or it needs to be HR leading this effort, but we all can take practical steps in order to really impact inequities in the workplace. What would you suggest for some of the people listening?
Well, I think one thing that's been most impactful in my career is having my current manager is an excellent cheerleader. Anyone who knows him knows that he's an excellent cheerleader for me. And I think that's something any one of us can do, is find someone that we can cheerlead for. Even if it's just bringing up something great they did in a meeting, or those little bits that brings them to the table that they might not have been invited to before. So I think that's one thing I really wanted to touch on. Another thing is I really love to include men in these types of conversations. That this isn't that we need them to help us we need to have the conversation with everyone, not just women. So those are 2 big things that I think are approachable and doable by us, to invite them to the conversation. So
I agree completely. Eugenia, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely 100% agree with Caitlin. I think just speaking up, involving or celebrating each other, I think that goes a long way. And also, making it clear that if anybody's reporting to you, or that they're free to speak up if they disagree with you, right? So like, I think it's a beautiful thing to disagree and have different opinions, because that balances ultimately a solution that might be even better than what we started with. So I think I definitely I love having discussions. Like I said, I have a strong character, so sometimes it comes across that I have only one opinion, but I do take a step back to be quiet sometimes, so that others can kind of speak up their ideas and stuff like that. So it might not even be inclusion in genders or backgrounds, right? It might be inclusion of thought and inclusion of different perspectives.
the multifacets of inclusion, right? And it really is though, and it is important, like Caitlin and Eugenia said, that we are allowing voices to be heard. And it can just be those small acts that we're doing and small things and just invitations that we give people to invite them to the conversation. So we do want to take some questions from the audience if you have any. We also want to hear, I mean, is there anything that you're doing to promote gender inequity in your workplace? You know, what are some of the small day-to-day things that you are doing as audience members? I would love to hear some, or even write in the chat. We want to hear from you. What are you doing to contribute to inspiring inclusion?
Yeah, Gabby, this is Sarah. We've had some really good chatting going on in the chat. So I'm hoping if we open it up to people, you know, to discuss, that people will, you know, speak up and bring their thoughts to the table. But thank you, panelists, for, you know, kicking this off so far and starting some great discussion. So I encourage anyone to speak up.
I love, so earlier in the chat, I see that, you know, Jessica said it's great to see non-minorities participate in the conversation on equity and diversity. And I couldn't agree more. We can fight at our place for the table, but it's much better to be invited. And I just think that really resonates, right? It's being invited to the conversation. It's not having to fight all the time. Eugenia, I feel like I keep going back to your first story that you shared on that advocate piece, but it really is that. It is not having to be the person to constantly be seen as the complainer or constantly have to speak for yourself. And like I said, strain your voice, right? So it really is impactful when you can be invited to the table and be open to being part of the conversation, right? And that's what we're doing to you all right now, right? We want to open up this conversation to you. So Amanda wrote in the chat, spreading awareness of organizations like this within my company. Yes, take this back and let people know what you're doing, some of the actions they can do. Pactive, our group is taking some time today to write notes to show appreciation to women on our team that are actually in the field working in our production areas. I think that is a good key. I absolutely love that. I feel sometimes the women, I'm actually in a plant today, and I think sometimes the women on the plant floor miss out on some of these opportunities and miss out on some of the love that's being shown. And so I think it's really important that we do take it to them and do make them, again, make people feel like they're included in the conversation. Now, I do have a question that it was brought up, and I was contemplating whether I was going to ask it, but I'll go ahead and I'll put our panelists on the spot and ask it anyways. So we were promoting this event, and it was asked on a call that it was either a call I was on earlier this week, or even something maybe for women in industry, where we were talking about how some men feel like they need to be a white savior, right? And they need to just a white knight in shining armor, right? Who come and they save you, right? And they can come into the space and speak for you. How would y'all recommend, I guess, asking our allies how they need to show up for us? You know, how would you suggest that if we do have any men joining the call, how would you suggest they show up for you in a way that's more impactful, more meaningful, but not necessarily damsel in distress demeaning? Caitlin.
Listen to us when we talk. I think that's the key here is talk to us. Don't just assume.
Great first step, right? Tony, yeah, please.
First, don't assume that we're broken. Because usually when you're coming in to fix something, the assumption is it's broken. It's not broken. You know, is it in need of a shot in the arm, or however you want to think about it from that analogy? But one thing I didn't hear today, but I think is really key around the paper industry, we're really big into metrics. We measure tons, we measure dollars, we measure profit. Do we measure how well we're doing on the people front? do we measure how well we're doing on the diversity front? Because what I've found in my 30 plus years of being here, what gets measured gets managed. And I would really ask people, are you looking at KPIs related to your people strategy? And do you have a people strategy? Because if you don't, you probably need one.
Most definitely, most definitely. Eugenia, do you have more to add as well?
Yeah, for sure. I am more on the positive side, as you see from the questions that I selected to answer. But I definitely like to be kind in the environment. I would like to assume that sometimes it's biases that prevent us people from making the wrong choices or put us in a place where it might put us in a tough spot. So I definitely think I love whenever that person, my advocate, said, what did you mean by that, right? It's not super confrontative, right? It is kind, it gives you the person an opportunity to step back, and it doesn't create painful conflict. So I think, I don't, honestly, I'm a strong woman, but if you want to stand up for me, go ahead. Like, I'm happy, I'm thankful for the intent, right? So I'm happy to, whatever way you do it, just make sure it is with the intent to support me and is the intent to teach rather than to reprimand, right? I do want to assume people are sometimes don't know better. They haven't worked with women before. I mean, manufacturing work is a beautiful environment. It is stressful. Sometimes it's not personal. So take that into account as well, right? And then whenever, even if you're a woman, you don't have to wait for a white man in shining armor to come through, right? If I see that an operator is being treated unfairly or something, you can stand up for them, right? If you're not the person that's being attacked or hurt or being part of the conversation, just standing up for the other person and asking those questions ourselves, like we don't have to wait around for that one person. We can all be there for each other.
I think you said something really great too, that even ties back to that first quote that I said, you know, if you do the best you can do until you know better. Then when you know better, do better, right? So we need to assume that these interactions we're having with people aren't malice, right? They're not people actively trying to kick us from the table or push us back from the table. In some cases it is, but we need to try to, you know, be positive, be optimists when we think about it. And in doing so and being optimistic, then we can have those educational moments and teach and educate people on what went wrong, what was said. I love here Megan shared in the chat and is clapping back. Don't assume, right? Don't assume. And Tina, yeah, listen, ask, right? Instead of assuming, let's ask how they can help and if we even want the help in the first place. Bob, I saw you came off mute. Were you wanting to contribute?
Yes, I would like to say, to be the male, I guess, to start off the conversation on the men's side. Let me put it this way. I think I'm definitely a non-minority. Okay, I am, and you know, even within white people, we have like I'm originally from French Canada. That made me a bit of a minority, and this sort of thing. But still, I'm white and I'm a male and all that, and it was probably easier than it is for a lot of people to get through. But let me see if I can get my video on here, so you can see me. Here we go. Start video. Oh, the host has stopped it. So no, the only one that can start my video is the host. But I think, first of all, I think this is wonderful. Okay, I mean, I completely support and agree for everything that's been said. I think if I look, I've been around for a long time, and I've seen tremendous evolution in the participation of women in the workplace, and it's all been extremely positive. Women, very much like you said, JB, it's a cake. The cake analogy was fantastic. You know, like I think that's how you really get your strength. But my emphasis has always been, and it's not just for women, for men as well, has always been on self-confidence, helping somebody develop their self-confidence. people come into the workplace and they're usually young, they don't know too much, and they're not very confident. And the faster you can become confident in yourself and feel like Eugenia said, feel like you can basically speak to anybody and not worry and getting out of your comfort zone. You might get an assignment, you might ask for an assignment that's not directly what you feel you've always done. I think this is how you really grow. It's by stretching yourself. And I think Tony, you've been in many different situations in the paper industry, and I can see you've got that confidence, And I saw it with Caitlin and Eugenia as well, and with you, Gaby. I mean, and I know, of course, I know Sarah, and I know a number of other ones that are you. I've been fortunate in that my business partner is a woman and a very strong woman, and I've learned a lot from her. And together we have an objective of helping all of our employees, whether they're men and women. But we're noticing that we're getting more and more women in our company, and that if we can help them develop their confidence, just like we do with men, and help them get out of their area of comfort, because that's how you grow. You need to stretch yourself. You need to feel, and when you're given a challenge, just believe that you're going to be able to do it. Don't say, am I going to be able to do it? Yes, you can say that to yourself, but to the outside world, you say, yes, I'm going to do it. You're going to get the best results you've ever seen. And that to me has been the secret for my own development and the development of my people in my company. And I've always been, since 1980, I've been promoting women when it was very, very new. At that time, the women had just come out basically in the early 70s. They had just come out saying, we want to be equal. We want to be in the workforce. And I've always made it my mission to try to help. But I don't look, and I've evolved to, it's not just women, it's everybody. Everybody who works for me will find that I'll stretch you. I'll help to develop your self-confidence, and I'll encourage you to say anything to anybody. I encourage dissent, I encourage questions, and I find that's how things have gotten much stronger. And I have, I think, a pretty strong group of people. They work well together, and when there's conflicts, bring it on. Make it in the open. Don't keep it in the background. So these are my words of wisdom, I guess I would have from a non-minority white male.
No, but that voice is important though, Bob, right? It's important for you
Absolutely.
to be a part of the conversation and share those things with us. So that again, we can take that. It's not like we said in the beginning, it's not about excluding any voice, it's including everyone. Like you include everyone on your team. It's that piece. It's so that we can have all the voices at the table and then can make the necessary adjustments afterwards.
And it's just like marriage. You got to work at it all the time. I've been around for a long time and I'm still learning and I'm still working at it.
Yes. And
and
it's
for
not
those
50-50.
of you who are happily married, you know that that's the way you have to have happy marriage. I married a very strong woman, and I'm extremely happy. But we have to work, both of us have to work at it all the time.
Yes, yes. And like I said, it's not 50-50, right? It's sometimes you have to give more. And that's the same way how it works in the office place. I will too put Amanda on the spot right quick too, because I did see in the chat, Amanda, I was on something else. You were talking about this book, right? The book that was, where is it in the chat? Good Guys, How Men Can Be Better Allies for Women in the Workplace. Wasn't there a book that you shared, Amanda, that if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and talking about if you've got the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually a YouTube video though, but this is a group of gentlemen that got together and they were talking about how men can be better allies. So not only advocating for women, but the actual actionable steps that you can take. And there is a book, and I'll look that up and put that in the chat as well. It's really helpful. It's, again, taking that action. So really good tips, and not just talking about how you can advocate for women, but little things that you can do along the way.
Perfect. And those little things, thanks, Amanda, for that. And those little things really do add up and provide value. And hopefully by, again, researching and educating and dipping your toe into all of these different things, you can find out what works best for your team or what works best for your work environment. And you can go and utilize those things. Jessica said, Bob, you sound like an amazing mentor. Thanks for being an ally. And I think we say that to all of the men, all of the allies, all of the people on the call. Obviously, I can't, Eugenia or Caitlin, I can't remember which one of you said it. Promoting, I mean, we can be allies for each other as well, right? Promoting each other, raising each other up. It doesn't have to be a competition between any of us. It can be all of us working together to create that cohesive unit. Lisa, please, yes.
Normally I don't weigh in. I'm just here to host the meeting, but I can't stay out of this conversation. It's so fantastic. But one thing I wanted to say about men is be careful about playing the victim. You know, like Eugenia said, it's not always about you. So when you see things that are happening, you know, and you feel like, well, how come the women of the team are getting this new group, or they're getting this kind of support from our executive suite, or why are they going on a special lunch or something? You know, thinking about what does that mean to that group of people, instead of just how is that taking from me? And I think that that's a really big point to make, is that, you know, again, like, I'm not taking boxes out from underneath you so you can't see. I'm asking that boxes be put under me so I can see as well. And so I think that's the important part to help men be part of this discussion, is we're not trying to hurt you. We're not trying to take something from you. We're trying to strengthen the group of us all together.
Yes, yes. God, claps for that, Lisa. Snaps for that. Completely agree with that. It is really important that that people understand that role. Tony, yes.
No, I'm clapping.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
And finally figured out the reactions.
Love it.
Hey, Gabby, this is Sarah. It's also too, not just, you know, with inclusion and equity, it's not about never having a disagreement or about, you know, never being wrong. It's about opening the table to have those disagreements and, you know, just be included in part of the solution or the resolution of that. You know, I think when we promote things like equity and diversity and inclusion, you know, sometimes we assume that that means that we can't, you know, have disagreements, or that, you know, somebody's always going to be right. And I think that we miss that sometimes, because that's definitely not the case. Tony.
Yes, sister, I have a little saying. It's not about being right. It's about getting it right.
Oh.
So when you get that out of the way, it's like, I don't care who's right. We just got to get it right.
I love that. I love that.
I do too. Yes, that is a really great saying. Is that a Tony original?
It is. It's probably the only one.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Oh, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing. So we've got the book shared in the chat. And love the little factoid there. So research shows that when men are deliberately engaged in gender inclusion programs, 96% of women in those organizations receive real progress in gender equality, compared with only 30% of women in organizations without strong male engagement. Like, look at that. What a statistic, right? And sorry, I know if people can read the chat, I'm also saying some of what's on the chat for people maybe who are just listening in. So really great stat. The book, Good Guys, Better Allies, Work in the Workplace. Great conversation today, y'all. I did just want to challenge you, though. I really wanted to thank everybody for their time. And to end this discussion, we wanted to end it in a little different way. And Eric, let me get you, well, actually, let me go ahead and take you now. Eric, please go ahead.
I'll try and make it quick, as I know Amanda's probably pretty nervous that I raised my hand here. So for those who don't know,
No.
Amanda's my boss. I at home and in my team at Valmet am surrounded by women. I have 2 girls at home and my wife, and a great team at Valmet. Interact with Caitlin quite a bit as well. So for me, I forget who said it, but I think Bob reiterated it, and it might have been Caitlin too. But the biggest thing for me has been listening. I do, as a guy, tend to be a little aggressive, not necessarily outwardly, but the way I think about things sometimes, and I might approach a subject or a particular project and kind of try and take things over. So for me, the biggest thing, whether it's professionally or personally, has been listening to understand a different perspective more and kind of allow it in. So that really resonated with me. So I just wanted to comment on that real quick. So thanks, everyone.
Love that. Yes. And listening for understanding is really, really important too, right? So I thank you, Eric, for getting off the call, getting off mute and sharing that with us, because I think it is important for other allies to hear what works best for other allies. So we want to continue sharing that. And in true form of sharing and spreading the word, we wanted to do a call to action for you. We want you to spread the word by sharing the Tappy Win International Women's Day social media post and making sure that you put kind of a personal spin on it. Sharing your personal, share it on your personal pages, but also talk about how this impacted you. Extend it to your peer networks, and don't forget to highlight what you want to do. What is your commitment to inspiring inclusion? And again, it's really important that we all think about what we can do personally to impact this and create a more inclusive world. So I will kick it back to Sarah for closing remarks on Tappy and wins, but I did just want to again put this up here. We talked about it yesterday and thought that it would be wonderful if everyone really put inspiring inclusion into action by sharing this post and stating their commitment. So we hope you all enjoyed the panel today. And Sarah, if you wouldn't mind taking it over so we can close.
Yes, thank you, Gabby. And I just realized earlier that I didn't introduce myself when I said hello. So for anyone who's still confused who I am, my name is Sarah Lohner. I'm a senior key account manager with Solenis, but I'm also the Tappy Women in Industry division chair. So I'd like to thank our panelists and moderator, Gabby, and for everyone who participated in the conversation today. It was wonderful. It was great. And I loved the energy we had. I will give a shout out to Bob. He is one of the greatest allies for women, and we love Bob. So thank you for being here today. But if you had a great time on this call and you want to learn a little more about WIN, we've added the QR code again, so you didn't miss the opportunity at the beginning. We also have a few more events. Our next event is actually our WIN Book Club. This will be the second edition of this Women in Industry Book Club. The book this time is the Taking the Work Out of Networking. I'm really excited for this. And our biggest event of the year, again, is part of TappyCon, which this year is in Cleveland, Ohio. We kick off TappyCon almost with the Women's Summit, which I think is just a great way to get the week started and to let women network ahead of TappyCon so that we can, know each other throughout the week a little bit better. And that helps us kind of be a little more included and feel more like, the paper industry Tappy family that we are. So the Women's Summit is April 27th in Cleveland, Ohio, just ahead of TappyCon. And we're going to continue this conversation, from International Women's Day. Our Women's Summit theme this year is Inspiring Inclusion, Empowering Women's Leadership and Equity in Industry. So I think that's going to be really great. And then to find more WIN events at TappyCon, we're going to have a few other events. We have a track session during the Pima track. That's on Tuesday afternoon. We've got a lunch, and we have a reception as well. So we are here at 10:30. I thank everybody so much for being with us today, and have a happy, wonderful International Women's Day and inspire somebody. Thank you.